Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend-Gard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just wanna quilt. So Carolanne Donovan is our guest today. She's part of our quilting army, and she's also got a blog, Sweet Carolanne, which is super cool. She makes clothes, she makes quilts, she's part of the Quilt Club, she's president of the Quilt Guild, and her day job, she's a digital marketer, so she chatted with us about that. She's so fun. We're going to have her back for part 2.
My name is Carolanne Donovan, and I am calling from Milford, New Hampshire.
Awesome. And what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in their life?
Oh, wow. Well, my grandmother was a garment sewer. I also make garments. And so I would go over to her house a lot, and the sewing machine was in the den where my grandfather would watch TV. And whenever he would go out for a walk, she'd say, okay, we're going to the den. We're going to sew. Let's make a skirt. Let's make a shirt. We're gonna fix something.
That's really great.
So we were always doing things together, and then she eventually taught me how to do it myself, and she was like, okay, I'm not going to make you anything anymore. You have to do it yourself.
How old were you when that happened?
Probably about 15.
Very cool. And when did you start quilting?
I only started quilting about 3 years ago. I really wanted to make friends locally that liked fabric, and the only groups I could find were quilting groups. So I decided, hey, people who like fabric are the people I want to be with, so I'm going to join this guild and start quilting.
And how was it to quilt? How is quilting different than making garments?
Well, the main difference I noticed right away was with quilting, you have a 1/4-inch seam allowance. So that just seemed crazy to me when I first got started. I was like, what? Only a 1/4 of an inch, not 5/8?
That's funny.
But now that I've been doing it for a little while, I find that sometimes it's much more relaxing to quilt than to make garments, because I can just, keep doing the same block over and over again instead of having to sew a seam and then try it on and make sure that it fits in the shoulder. And so. Yeah.
And you joined the New Hampshire Modern Quilt Guild, which is kind of interesting for a number of reasons. So what made you decide to do, because there's a lot of quilting up in your area of the world, what made you decide to do the Modern Quilt Guild?
Before I was a quilter, I loved Anna Maria Horner's fabrics. I used them for garment making a lot, and I just admired her. And so one of the show and tell pictures that the guild had posted included her fabrics. So I was like, these are the people for me. They like the same stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah, because New Hampshire's known for all of its traditional kind of quilting, right? So
yeah, there are quite a few traditional guilds around, and there's a quilt museum in Lowell, which is right near my parents' house. So I've been there quite a few times.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because I love we have one of our main people that's helped us from the beginning. Pam Weeks is the curator there, and it's kind of amazing that the New England Quilt Museum does as much. It's not all old timey, right? It does some really cool, interesting stuff. And old timey is good, so I'm not saying it negatively, but it's kind of amazing. People always think about the Quilt Museum is old fashioned, and they had the protest stuff, and they have had really interesting exhibits. The Japanese exhibit.
They've had some great stuff. I brought my 8-year-old nephew there, probably, I think it was last summer, so he was 7 at the time, and he loved it. And they had somebody demoing how to use Bernina sewing machines, and he was like, Auntie, I want to learn. I want to see how it works. And the machine they had did letters, so he wrote, so he sewed his name, and he loved it.
We love that. Yeah, right. That's really cool. All right, so you joined the guild 3 years ago?
Yes, just about 3 years ago. I joined. And
how involved are you?
So I joined probably I think it was August or September, and then I went on my first retreat the following month. And then I joined the board in January as the vice president of communications. I do digital marketing for my day job, so it was a really good fit for me. I take care of the website, the blog, I send an email newsletter, and I take care of the social media pages for the Guild. So I was vice president of communications for, 2016 and 2017. And then this year I got promoted to president.
That's so cool.
I'm still managing the website and the emails and stuff, but now I'm also, I help with retreats and programming and event coordination. We've had some really great teachers come recently, so I've helped with that. We do have one of our other members, Allison, she's in charge of those things, but I do help her, and we have a lot of fun.
So how important is the Guild to your life? Like, what role does being part of a Guild, being president of a Guild, play in your quilting life?
Oh, I don't think I would be a quilter if I hadn't joined the Guild, honestly. I kept saying, I'm going to start quilting, but it wasn't until I was amongst all these fellow quilters and was being inspired by them on an at least monthly basis that I was like, yes, I need to dedicate more time to this, and I need to learn new things. I've taken so many classes now, and it's such a big part of my life now.
Yeah.
It's funny, everybody at work knows that, I've had sew-ins at my work. We use the conference room for the Guild. My work it used to be a church, so we have a really big room that we've used for sew-ins, and I bring like design walls in and work on quilts at my lunch hour. And
that's very cool.
The machine quilting show takes place at the hotel right next to my work, so I go over there whenever that's happening or whenever there's a quilt show there.
That's very cool. And tell me a little bit about the Guild in terms of intellectual property. Like, how do you choose? Like, you've got a charity quilt on here that I can see that's like, what is it? It's Cutting Garden. And how did you go about like choosing it? And then did you buy the pattern? Did you buy a bunch of patterns? Sort of, how does that part of the Guild part work?
So it's a little bit different for each charity project. So for the Cutting Garden quilt, we got permission from the woman who wrote the pattern. I can't think of her name right now. I apologize.
It's okay. It's Krista Henbury.
Excellent. So our charity committee had found that pattern and thought that it would be a good project for the group to work on because everybody did little bits of it, and then it went together very easily. So the the charity committee reached out to her and said, hey, we want to use this. Is that okay? How do you want us to proceed? And she basically just gave us the okay to use it for a charity project.
And did she charge you anything do you know? Like, did you guys pay, did you have to pay a fee to use it, or did she just say, go ahead and use it because she's excited that you were using it?
I'm pretty sure she said we could just use it.
That's cool.
But a project that we have going on right now, we're using an Elizabeth Hartman pattern for.
Yeah. And
the charity committee, the new charity committee, different than last year, they reached out to her directly, and she said, if you buy, it's from one of her books, and I believe what she had said was, if you buy 4 of my books, then you can make as many of these as you want amongst your Guild members.
Oh, that's really interesting. But so if you're in a Guild, so that's really helpful. So first, reaching out in both instances, you reached out to the designer, and then then each of them had different ways of approaching it. But that's really interesting that 4 books would equal, and so that's what you did. You bought 4 books and then copied whatever you needed to copy.
Yep, and then we've worked with Elizabeth Hartman before. We made the Aviatrix medallion quilt a couple of years ago for another local charity, and she sent us those patterns to use.
Oh, how cool.
So she's been very good to us.
That's really cool. Love it. Cool. And then what's the role? So you guys have entered Quilt Con before, have you?
Yes, we have.
And so what was that like, getting a quilt ready for Quilt Con and making decisions and all that?
Well, we last year we weren't able to get our quilt finished in time, so that was an adventure. But in previous years, the charity committee had kind of taken the main role of getting everything ready, deciding on and designing a pattern, and then distributing fabric, and then hosting sew-ins to get it done. And we have quite a few long arm quilters in our group, so trying to get one of those people in the guild to long arm quilt it, and we have tended to go the custom quilting route with our Quilt Con quilts. So that was kind of the problem last year. It was by the time we had finalized a design, it seemed like we were already behind, and we just didn't have time to get it quilted. But the church that we have our monthly meetings at, we're going to donate it. What was supposed to be the Quilt Con quilt is going to be donated to them this year. So it'll still
really
be
cool.
good use.
That's great. Now, are you doing the small challenge for this coming Quilt Con?
I haven't even heard of it yet. Tell me more.
So I think it's like you have to have pieces under 1 inch. Let me see. I'll look it up. And QuiltCon 2019 challenge. Theme is small pieces. The design theme is small piecing. Small piecing. You probably have noticed some modern quilters use small piecing in recent years. Well, it can be hard to define. Let's say that small piecing would incorporate fabric pieces smaller than 1 inch in either width or length. So you might picture long skitty strips or tiny squares. The small piecing can be improvisational, traditionally pieced, or foundation pieced. And then it has a certain size. So teeny tiny pieces. That's there. And then the color palette, which is like blues and like turquoise and purple.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm going to be going to QuiltCon for the first time next year, so that's definitely something to put on my radar.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going as well, so we'll have to meet up. That's really cool. I just found out I'm going to lecture and do a workshop.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, so you'll have to keep us posted. I'd really be curious if you guys do take it up, how this all goes together, how you do it exactly and how you design it and move forward, because it seems like a lot to sort of think about,
Yeah. So last year we when the charity project was announced, we put out a call to our members and said, hey, if you have an idea for this at our next meeting, you can have time before show and tell and you can pitch your idea to the group and then we'll vote on which project we want to move forward with. And we only had 3 people that had ideas. So then we voted on that. And so that was when we moved forward. But then, getting the fabric and doing the blocks, I didn't realize how time consuming it was going to be because, this isn't my norm, but sometimes I can bang out a quilt from start to finish in a month.
Right. So, so if you get a bunch of people involved, it gets a little more complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a very different dynamic working on a quilt with 44-ish other people.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. So what else so if you had to describe to someone a quilt guild, let's say they hadn't been to a quilt guild, so to tell me the components of what a quilt guild does, what it is, what is a quilt guild?
Sure. So I have, full disclosure, I've never been in another guild, so I only know the inner workings of the New Hampshire Modern Quilt Guild as it currently is. But, to me, a guild is a group of like-minded people who just want to hang out and have fun. And in the case of sewing, it's usually something that you're doing on your own. So when you get to be in a group of people, it just makes it so much more fun being all together and being able to brainstorm. So for us, the way our meetings are structured is we usually have, we meet from about 7 to 9:30 once a month for our general meeting. And we have business at the beginning. So we sign up for a retreat, or we tell people to save the date for an upcoming workshop, or we're doing a zipper pouch swap. So we had signups for that at our last meeting. And then we always have some sort of programming. So we've done all kinds of things. This past month, we played Quilters Bingo. So we had bingo cards that had facts about people in them, and then you had to go around the room and find people who matched those facts. Mm-hmm. So one of them was, find somebody who makes garments, and everybody came to me for that.
That's great.
So that was a lot of fun. And what else have we done? We've had trunk shows. Amy Friend is in the Seacoast Modern Quilt Guild, so she's fairly local. So she came and did a trunk show with us last year, which I unfortunately missed that meeting, but everybody said that it was great. And her quilts are amazing, so I'm sure it was.
That's very cool.
And we do like demo nights. So we had binding night recently where we had people showing how to hand bind, how to machine bind, and then we showed a tutorial about how to use Elmer's glue when you're doing binding to make your life easier.
Really?
Yep.
How do you do